Mr. Josh Butler, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Mate, well, thank you for taking the time, because I know there's a pretty large time difference between me and you. Was it 13 hours or something?
Yeah, it is indeed 13 hours.
Crazy.
So it's Monday night here at the moment.
Yes, very much Monday morning here in Liverpool, back in the UK. So how are things in New Zealand then? Because, like, I didn't know you basically done the bunk. So I'm really interested in like how all that came about, because I basically hadn't heard from you for ages and then just saw you on Instagram absolutely blowing the back doors off a club somewhere in New Zealand, and I was like, I've got to talk to him about this. This is too good to be true.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's a weird coincidence really, because I went to school over here. My family decided to move here when I was a kid, basically. So I went to school in a very small town called Kerry in the North Island, top of the North Island. And then been lucky enough to come back here touring over the years. My dad still lives here. Dad's been here for 15 years, maybe a bit more now. And obviously when the COVID thing happened, like I probably did about eight months or something at home in Warrington. And then New Zealand was the first place to recover, coincidentally. So I was like, God, I've got the passport sat there. I'm going to go. Booked a one-way flight and arrived here on the 3rd of December.
amazing. And you know what? Anyone in your position would do the exact same thing, you know, especially given the situation in the UK. You could kindly call it a bit of a shit show, do you know what I mean? So I imagine New Zealand is just a complete total opposite of what you've experienced back in the UK.
Yeah, and I was living alone in the UK as well. So like the first 3 or 4 months when it was strict lockdown, it was pretty tough. You know, the only people I would see was the people at the checkout in the supermarket. Started to go a little bit loopy. So yeah, it was a good move for sure. And it's been a bit unpredictable over here. I mean, it's not perfect because we still do go back into lockdowns. Even if there's one case in the country, we'll go back into a lockdown. So it can be a little bit unpredictable at times, but generally it's a lot better. You know, we have windows of freedom.
I imagine, I said it as soon as I saw that video. I was saying it to a load of my friends, like, New Zealand is now basically the rave capital of the world. Like, it's insane. Like, just that video on Instagram, I was like, oh, I remember those days. And then it was like, is he posting this from like 6 months ago or something, or like over a year ago or something? And it was like, no, it was like the night before.
Playing that first gig back was the weirdest feeling. I mean, just going into it and being in a room full of people was intense enough in itself, but the energy of the people, because, you know, obviously there was a lockdown here as well. So this was one of the first big events back that they'd had. They'd done a few smaller ones, but this was a fucking good one. It's called Electric Rush in Queenstown. It's my first gig back, and it was wild, mate. It was I had a lot of emotions going on. I was obviously very excited to be back. I was a bit anxious about being around so many people. And it did take a bit of getting used to.
No, I can imagine.
It's not a night I'm going to forget in a long time.
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously because we're on the supposed sort of build up here to that moment happening in June. So there's a lot of excitement and there's been a lot of events booked here. But, you know, it's interesting you say that, you know, there's a real mix of emotions because, you know, I think at the moment everybody's anticipating it here and it's like, you know, get me in the club and I can't wait and stuff like that. And it's interesting you bring up that kind of like anxiety of it as well, because that's something I've definitely felt of, like, I'm not sure like how I'm going to dip my toe back into it because I've just become so, like, being in isolation has just become so normalized to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. It's a weird one, isn't it? I mean, it's obviously not natural for humans to be cooped up like that. But I don't think it's going to take long for people to adjust back into it. It probably will be very, very weird going, the first few raves. But yeah, it's easy to get back into it, and this sounds so bad in a way, but it feels very normal over here at the moment. When things are going, you kind of forget what's going on till you watch the news, and it's like, oh shit, we're so lucky over here.
No, and again, like it's not to, like, I've always said this to people, like, who've still been fortunate to play the odd gig around the world, when things have been safe and they've been legally been able to do so. There's been a lot of hand wringing online and a lot of, like, criticism and stuff, and it's like, well, if anybody in the same position as you or any of these other artists, if they were able to do what they love to do safely even during a pandemic, I would argue it's probably even more important to do it now than ever before.
It keeps the scene going, and I think you mentioned social media. For me, posting some videos online, I've had to be very careful, or I've wanted to be very careful about what I'm posting and how I'm presenting it, because I feel like it could come across completely the wrong way. I mean, the way social media is these days, people are very sensitive, and I've had to be quite careful about how I present these videos, I think, because I'm not posting too much about clubbing and stuff, because obviously a lot of my followers are still in the UK, Europe, and America. But yeah, it's good that there's now an end in sight, and my hope for posting those kind of videos was to give people some positive vibes and light at the end of the tunnel,
No, it definitely did for me. Because, realizing just how kind of, you'd posted it within 24 hours of the gig, it really was, like, for me, the first sign of, like, okay, we're turning a corner here. All right, maybe not in this country just yet, but clearly things are starting to trend a little bit more in the right direction because we're allowed to start doing things like this again, So, no, I definitely took it that way, man. And, I don't think anything, I think you've handled, your social media really beautifully in terms of, like, the balance of, like, life in New Zealand as it is now. And, every time you post something, I see it in the studio with someone, or I see you playing a gig. I'm just really happy for you. That's the thing.
Nice,
like, overwhelmingly, I'm just absolutely made up that you've been able to get that opportunity to do it,
Yeah, and it's a weird one here because the house and techno scene is quite small. In fact, it's very small compared to most places in the world. Drum and bass is like king over here. I'd say drum and bass is bigger here than it is in the UK. So there's like, at the moment, Andy C and Tom Piper are touring New Zealand. Nets guys here as well. There's a load of drum and bass guys coming over. So for me, I find it quite exciting to be able to help that house and techno scene grow a bit more, because it's very, very underground. It's almost a little bit hippie over here as well. There's a lot of I played a festival on Friday called Earthbeat, which was very much like dreadlocks and bare feet and crystals and all that,
Look, it sounds like my type of gig, to be honest.
It was really cool. It made a nice change. I think there's a lot of potential for it to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And weirdly, that can be one of the positives that come out of this, is that, it will put the focus on scenes like this, and, New Zealand's properly showing its worth and its value to the world at the moment. So it's going to be really exciting to see what happens over there, because, I mean, I never made it as far as New Zealand, but I got a similar sense even pre-pandemic from, like, I toured in Australia in 2018 and just was blown away by, the scene's obviously bigger there than in New Zealand, and they have bigger names come over, but it's still such a kind of a local, really friendly, really quite underground scene, if you know what I mean. And with my sound as well, because Aussie, as you know, Aussies love a bit of prog, like they're all up for a bit of Hernan and all that, you know what I mean? So,
and again, I find in Australia it's still got that hippie edge, because I'm sure they do bush duffs.
Yeah.
they just go out into the bush and have raves basically,
Yeah.
and it's all like kind of Burning Man vibes. It's a different crowd to in Europe, I think.
Yeah, totally, totally. And yeah, Rainbow Serpent is definitely one of those festivals I want to get to, like, because it's everyone who I know who has played that has just raved about it and said it's basically, like you say, it's like an Australian Burning Man, basically. So,
Yeah, I have not been myself, but I've heard nothing but good things.
no, it's great. So, how did you find, like, how did you obviously mentioned you were living at home alone back in Warrington. I mean, what a place to be home alone in as well, like, do you know what I mean? With all due respect,
Yeah,
like how did you find how did you find your productivity in the studio? Because like I'll be honest with you, I found mine just completely dried up. Like I've been kind of pretty low on inspiration for quite some time, and it's really made me realize it's the energy of moving around and seeing different places and meeting different people and being exposed to different ideas that really gets my juices flowing. So that's been a bit of a tough one for me. I mean, how have you found it?
I was exactly the same. The first 2 or 3 weeks, I'd say, were the most productive so basically my studio used to be in a unit in town. So I'd travel 10, 15 minutes in the car every day to get to the studio. And when I heard that the lockdown was coming and it was like really serious, and I thought, oh, there's no way I'm going to get away with traveling. So I've moved all my studio back home, put it in the spare room. And I've always found moving to a different room is quite creative, quite inspiring for me. It makes me quite creative. So the first few weeks of being in that new space, I really enjoyed. But when I got used to the room, and then the novelty kind of wears off, and you're just in the house every day, like you said, the creativity slowly dries up, because I think as traveling DJs, we get inspired from the energy of people and seeing reactions to certain tracks. For me, anyway, that was a massive one. Coming back on a Sunday or Monday after a mega weekend of gigs, I'd just be so fired up to make tunes.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I'm the same. I'm totally the same. And it's been really interesting, like the sort of, because the shift that I made was, well, if I'm not really feeling making music, what I can do is I can really help people in line of what we do here at NYT. And like we really just concentrated over the year of just building. I kind of think I've built the thing that I needed. Like I built a community around the brand. So
Amazing.
It's not exactly been like I've been completely alone. It's like I've had this amazing community of people that have all come together, and we've really helped each other through the sort of the last year. So my focus has mostly been on like education and making courses and stuff like that. So it's been a bit of a shift mentally for me, because I've had to realize that I can be creative in different ways rather than just constantly knocking out tunes, and having different projects and different ways of looking at things. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, so, well, once my creativity had dried up, I started to speak to other people, other producer friends, and started doing a few collaborations. Two minds are better than one, aren't they? So I did manage to get a few tracks made, but they were mostly collaborations. I did a few with Dennis Cruz.
Wicked.
Yeah, quite a lot with some singers as well. Started this new thing called Denton, which was more geared around songs, I suppose. Like that's still dance music, but songs and collaborations with singers where they would have complete creative control to do their thing. So again, I think that was a shift in my creativity. I'm still making music, but it was in a different way. Whereas usually I would just be on my own, feeding off that energy from the weekend, like I mentioned. Shifted it to more household music, I suppose.
Yeah, well, there's not much point making bangers for dance floors that are currently empty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's funny because like you say, it's exactly the same for like I've spoken to a lot of artists as well, and like not everyone's the same. Like some people have just really plouged on and just like, I've heard some music that people have been making in the last year that they're holding on to, and it's like, Jesus Christ, you've got weapons grade bangers here for a year.
Amazing.
But a lot of other people are like exactly what you were saying. It's like once it hit, and especially for people like yourself who tour quite a lot, you don't realize how much you're running on the adrenaline of touring. And I saw a lot of like memes. You probably saw them at the beginning of lockdown. It was like, oh well, music producers spend 99.9% of the time on their own anyway, so they're going to be fine. In fact, this is what we trained for, And there's like, well, come back to me in 2 or 3 weeks and say that, And lo and behold, like everybody about a month in was like sort of texting me going, I've just hit the wall here. Like I've just got nothing to do. I've got nothing to say. As well, you've got no experiences to really sort of like feed into the studio.
Well, that's it. I think our brains thrive on input, don't they? And you have to cultivate what you're putting in there. You have to feed it the right things for it to process. And if there's not going on, then you're not stimulated enough.
No, exactly. And again, like I suppose with the move, I mean, did that have a positive impact on productivity and inspiration and stuff like that once you'd moved over and started getting into a new environment?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I've not been as productive as I used to be, but I am making music again, definitely. Making some more like, I don't want to say it's proggy, but it's definitely a little bit more techno-y than I used to. So I've been speaking to Nicole Mudaber. She wants some tracks for her label Mood. So I've written some pretty cool stuff for her. I guess it's it's inspired by the New Zealand scene a little bit more as well, because it's quite proggy over here. It's or progressive. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's not as tech housey. Let's say that.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that because I did even notice from like the videos you've been posting up. It's like some of the tracks that you were saying you were playing. I was like, oh, he's playing a Patrice Baumel track. That's not quite. I wouldn't expect Josh to play stuff like Pat. You know what I mean?
I've been loving his stuff recently.
Oh mate, I mean, and he's a massive part of NYT as well. Like he's been absolutely amazing with us. Like he did a track feedback session for us last November, I think it was, and it went on for like 4.5 hours. And
nice
he
one.
literally listened to every beat of every track, and honest to God, the feedback he gave was so thoughtful, so on point, so constructive, and so positive. It was amazing. So like we've got plans in place, me and Pat, to be doing a lot of stuff together, like on the educational side of things. So yeah, watch this space, mate. It's going to be very exciting because he's really passionate about that, and as a lot of people know, there's like a kind of an ongoing bromance going on between me and him over the last few years. So it gets a bit of battle. You are.
I said, what a duo!
I know, mate. Tell me about it. Like it's a bit of a gruesome twosome, to say the least. Like so, it's good, man. Because like we've become good friends, and we see eye to eye on a lot of things, like in terms of creativity and everything from like blockchain and Bitcoin and stuff all the way through to music and stuff. So with him being the guy that he is, and he's just got such a great perspective on things, like there's some really exciting stuff we're going to be bringing to the table. So
I look forward to seeing more.
Indeed, mate, indeed. And of course, like you've been doing courses for years, right, with Fader Pro and stuff as well. And
yeah, done a couple of things with Fader Pro. Now working with Shadow Child on his project One for the Nerds.
Yes, Simon was our first ever like sort of big artist who come and did a talk for us at NYT, so I've got all the time for Simon. He invited me down to his house and fed me, and we did like a 2-hour live stream. It was wicked.
I bet it was. I mean, I think he's the perfect kind of person to be doing that as well. Teaching, he breaks things down in such an easy way to digest. I think people are going to get a lot out of this project that he's started.
Yeah, I love it. I love it because it's it's a very different model to what we offer here at NYT, which you guys are going more sort of one-to-one basically, whereas we're more sort of community-based, which is quite cool. So it's it's a really lovely dovetail of like, between what we do and what One for the Nerds do and stuff. And again, like, I count Simon a friend. I know Dave Robertson really well over the years. So again, I was really chuffed when I saw that you were joining because, again, I think it's a great fit for you as well.
Totally. I mean, it's a good team. He's got Cynthia, Huxley, Reset Robot. We're doing a Q&A on Tuesday, actually, tomorrow. Doing a Q&A with New Tone, which would be quite cool because I want to ask him a few questions about D&B.
Well, now being in New Zealand, like, you got to get with the program, haven't you?
Yeah, well, to be fair, I've always been well into my drum and bass. It's not something I produce that much of, but I've experimented here and there. Yeah, I used to go to a lot of drum and bass parties back in the day.
Oh yeah, same. Because another big mate of mine was is Future Bound. Brendan.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Me and Brendan go back a long way. I used to make him coffee in a record shop in Liverpool in like 1995.
No way.
Yeah, I know. I don't look that old, but I actually am that old, mate. So it's just dead funny, like, the way things kind of happen, because, like, I did, like, my GCSE work experience at Unity Records. It was on Bold Street in 95, and Brendan used to buy all the drum and bass in there. And then 8 years later, I had my own record shop, and then he ended up working for me, buying the drum and bass and stuff like that. And then he just blew up, and he's become a total pop star, like. So,
I was gonna say, that name's huge now.
Oh, mate, like, what Future Bound and Matrix have done is just absolutely mind-bending. And, we're going out with him and, having a few nights out with him, like, just some quality drum and bass nights. Absolutely insane. Like, so I went through a whole period of almost exclusively going to drum and bass parties because it was just nice to have a contrast from just constant prog.
Yeah. Same. For a good few years, I'd say a lot of my musical diet was drum and bass because it was mostly what my mates were into. So it'd always be at Chibuku in Liverpool for the dubstep revolution as well. That was a big part of it. And there was a place in Manchester called the Music Box. Spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, amazing. So, like, what kind of drum and bass were you mostly into? Were you into, like, the sort of the face melting stuff, or were you more of a liquid guy?
Not as much. When I was a bit younger, when I was 18, 19, I could definitely do a night on that. But I was always more into jungle, to be honest. Liquid and jungle. LTJ Buchan for me is the king. Jazzy, sexy, soulful stuff.
Oh, mate, yeah. I mean, like, I didn't get properly exposed to it. I didn't really understand it, but I caught him in passing one night, and I'll tell you how far back this is going. It was at the Courtyard at Cream, but the Courtyard didn't have a roof on it at the time.
Yeah, and you saw Buchan in.
Buchan used to play there quite regularly, and I enjoyed it, but it was so early in my musical journey. It was right at the beginning. I had no idea what I was taking in. And then years later, he played Shibuku with Makoto, and he did the full logical progression thing. They had MC Conrad on there and stuff, and it was an education.
Yeah, with Conrad in the mix. Damn.
Oh, mate, so good as well. Like, and I got to actually, like, I got to see Andy C a few times, like, directly in the booth as well, because one of his favourite MCs is Too Shy, who is actually a really, really good mate of mine, believe it or not. He's really good mates with my now ex-wife, and it's just he's just a phenomenal MC, and just to see Andy first hand what he does, like, within, like, almost touching distance, it's just you've never seen anything like it.
He's one of the best DJs across the board in electronic music, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
He's like fighting for number one spot, actually. I'm going to go and see him on Friday. He's playing in Auckland.
Wicked.
So I've got quite friendly with Ton over the years, Ton Piper, through the drum and bass scene in Manchester and through Warehouse Project and stuff. So, those boys are touring at the moment. So I'm going to go and catch up with them on Friday. Can't wait, man.
Not like Andy to be on tour, is it?
No.
Honestly. Honestly, I remember he turned up at Shibuku one night and he had two drivers because basically one would get tired and one could sleep in the back of the car while the other one took over. And I think Gary was saying to me too, Shy, that night he was saying they were playing 4 gigs that night because drum and bass DJs they only play an hour.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like right, rack it up, and I think they were doing like Grimsby. Was it something like Grimsby, Leicester, Liverpool, and London in the same night?
Mint. Fucking fair play to him.
Mate, I mean, hardest working guy in the game, as far as I'm concerned. Like,
yeah, totally up there.
No, totally, yeah. Which, it makes you wonder how he like sustains that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, well, I think he's got kids as well. So he flew over here. He did 2 weeks in isolation, which is a managed isolation. Basically, the army run the hotels. So it's very strict. You can't leave your room really, apart from to go for a 20-minute walk a day. So he did 2 weeks there, and then he's doing 2 weeks on the road all around the country and flying back to his family.
Crazy.
Often it.
Crazy. I mean, obviously we live for those days to sort of return, but I did get a sense. Like I remember, I mean, I spent a good like sort of 6 weeks in Ibiza in the last full season before last year. And I just remember like so many of my friends were coming in and out of the island and, I was getting to see so many of them and it was great in one sense, but you could just see how tired everyone was. And it was like, okay, like, is this going to get to a point where, is this going to become like unsustainable where the pressure of like constant gigging, constant touring, being in like 3 continents in 1 week, like how long can you keep that up for before you inevitably kind of burn out? You know what I mean?
It's a good question, and I honestly think if it wasn't for 2020 and COVID, I don't know how long I would have been on that wheel before recognizing that. Because I have definitely realized now that it is unsustainable the way I was living. And I'm probably not going to tour the way I used to again because it was an unhealthy way of life, to be quite honest.
A lot of artists are saying the same thing, that it's given them time to kind of reflect and make them realize just like how out of balance they were. And I mean, obviously, like I'm not anywhere near as like regular touring as you are or some of the guests we have on the podcast, but I've done my fair share over the years. And, I recognised it like off the back of working with Sasha on his last album, Scene Delete. Great to see that he's got a new album coming out shortly. I mean, I just had a massive uplift in touring and I just burnt out. I just completely burnt out from it. And, it was like having to do daft things like, having to fly all the way to Bali from LA to play 1 gig to turn around and fly all the way back. Just because of the way that it all kind of worked out and just really, really brutal. So, I made the decision that if I was going to continue touring, which I'm kind of on the fence about now, to be honest, like I'm kind of quite happy doing what I'm doing. As I say, I mentioned that Australia tour. I did a couple of gigs in Bali beforehand and I made sure I had like, I was away for like 6 weeks. But I played like 6 gigs in that time, so I had plenty of time to adjust, plenty of time to decompress, plenty of time to kind of get to know a place, because I'm sure that's frustrating for yourself, like, getting to a place that you wouldn't mind exploring and you can't go and see it because it's just like hotel room, airport, club, you know what I mean?
Almost one of the biggest regrets of my touring life was not actually seeing any of these places. And don't get me wrong, I did spend a bit of time in some of them. Like I got to travel to Ethiopia a couple of years ago.
Wow.
So I spent a week there, quite unusual places. Same in Guatemala, spent a few days there. But places like Medellin in Colombia, I was there for less than 12 hours, which I would love to go back and explore a little bit more. So one of the craziest routes I ever did, I don't know how I did this looking back because it's so intense, but I did Paradise DC-10 on the Wednesday in Ibiza. Flew from there. I didn't sleep, by the way. Stayed up all night, went straight to the airport, flew to Medellin the next day, played there on Thursday, then flew to Quito in Ecuador on Friday, and I played for 8 hours that night, and then a couple of hours sleep there, then flew to Waikeil. So you fly to Waikeil, then you drive 4 hours from Waikeil to Montanita, where the Lost Beach Club is,
Right.
which is one of the best clubs in the world. So it was a great final destination, but by the fourth gig, and then playing again for nearly 10 hours that night at the Lost Beach, because the promoter basically says you play for 3 hours on the main dance floor, and then you go into this cave, and he has these big doors, big soundproof doors, shuts everybody in, and he says you can play for as long as you want, just gives you free reign. So you can easily get quite lost in that room, and when you're sleep deprived and partying, and it gets wild, mate. And but the day after that, I was just completely dead. Yeah, the Sunday, after traveling halfway around the world and not sleeping, it's a weird feeling.
No, it definitely is. It definitely is. I mean, I felt exactly the same way after that whole sort of Bali run, because I just completely collapsed after that point, and I'd been just burning it just so hard for so long, and it was just so like we said, it come to a point where I couldn't even, like, I literally left LA for a while. I came back here and basically stayed with my mum and dad for a couple of weeks, because it was just like, I need to get my head together, like I need to kind of get a bit of space and be able to kind of totally reset. So I mean, I literally, I'm listening to what you're saying, and it's not a patch on what I went through, and as in what I went through was not a patch on what you went through. You know what I mean? It's just crazy to. I mean, I'm wondering how you're still breathing now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's good that you can recognise that burnout before it really hit you hard, though. You took some time out to decompress, was the key word that you said. I think that is so essential. Because, like for me, I'd never really got into music to DJ and well, maybe that's not quite right, but to be in clubs. I never got into it to be a touring DJ and to be on stage and stuff. Got into it just because I liked making tunes. And I liked mixing tunes in my bedroom, and then one thing led to another, and then you find yourself doing these mad schedules. So it is so essential for people who've spent most of their careers on their own in a studio or in the bedroom making music to take that time to decompress. Because I'm not the most extroverted guy in the world. I need that time to process everything,
Yeah, you're quite an introspective guy, and quite, as you say, you're quite quiet. So I appreciate you coming on the show in general, to be honest.
Yeah, of course. No, I don't mind talking to people, what I mean.
You're not that introverted. No, fair enough. And it's so funny because you think about a lot of the artists who have had problems, and you think of people who unfortunately lost, say Avicii, for example. He said exactly the same as what you've just said, which is I never got into this to be on stage. I got into this to actually make the music. But the way the industry model, and it's quite interesting because we've been doing a lot of talking about this. I've just talked to the EU rep for Bandcamp in the last week, and they've just had such a storming year business wise, and with the Bandcamp Fridays and everything else. And I think another one of the positives of the pandemic is that it's really put a focus on revenue streams and the ability for artists who necessarily at the moment can't tour, but maybe in future don't want to tour as excessively as you're talking about. How can they still make a reasonable living out of this whole thing? So, obviously, I think we perform those tours because it's the main way that we make money. So it's interesting that we're kind of looking at that now. We're looking at how we can kind of do more sustainable revenue models for artists going forward, because that might actually be a net positive on mental health as well.
Yeah, I mean, Bandcamp's been amazing for musicians over the last year or so. I've heard Audio Jack were actually saying they're going to only release on Bandcamp from now on.
Yeah.
I think they're going to try and avoid streaming platforms and Beatport and stuff.
Mm.
And fair play to them. I think more people, and obviously DJ Sneak had a big thing about all this as well, didn't he?
Mm.
I think it might become a lot more prevalent in the industry.
Not like Carlos to be controversial, is it?
No, let's not go down that path.
Yeah, we don't have to. We don't have to, especially after his last appearance in Liverpool. It didn't go too well for him. Bless him. I love Carlos. I really every time I spend time with him, I love them to bits. But yeah, totally. And there's a lot of artists who I know who are now pretty much paying their rent just off Bandcamp because they've been quite clever. Some artists have been quite clever and they've been fortunate enough to have like really good advice and really good management, especially around the contracts that they sign, because they've managed to kind of like maintain control of their master rights. So after a certain amount of time, they've been able to claim them all back and they've been able to sell them directly to their fan base on Bandcamp. So I just think it's going to be an essential thing going forward because, like, I mean, I'm sure you've done your fair amount of digging on Bandcamp, but one of the things I love about it is that it's as near as, like, I feel like I'm walking into a record shop when I log into Bandcamp.
It's as close as it's going to get, really, isn't it? It's easy to discover new artists as well. Like, I find you can spend a lot longer on Beatport trying to find good tracks, but there's just so much shit in there as well. Bandcamp, I find the quality is generally a little bit higher. The music's a little bit cooler and a bit quirkier.
Yeah. I think it also attracts a certain type of person, like the crate digger. You know, the person who's willing to kind of put the hard yards in. And, you know, I love some of the stuff like, you know, Ali from Bandcamp was saying to us about, like, you know, 40% of the time, because, you know, they have this like minimum price and thing, so you could like sell something for £1. So 40% of the time, people pay more than what people are asking. And
that's insane.
Like, literally, like, you know, he remembers, like, because Ali's got his own label, and he said he remembers, like, the first time it happened, and, like, somebody paid, like, he was charging, like, £10 for an album or something, and someone, paid him, like, 50 quid. And, like, so he was, like, emailing the guy going, did you, like, put a 0 in wrong there or something? And the guy's like, no, that's genuinely what I think it's worth, like.
That's class. It's such a good feature to have in it.
Oh, amazing. And the fact you get paid within 24 hours as well, you know, where you're not waiting straight into a PayPal account.
Straight into PayPal, yeah.
Yeah, you know, not having to, like, you know, wait for months and months and months for, like, accounting to be done and publishing and all that stuff, you know.
And unfortunately, a lot of the time, some labels will never send statements. You know, I've heard so many producers say they've never received a statement in fucking 10 years sometimes. You know, someone was saying it to me the other day. So yeah, it's definitely a new model that could be part of the future for this industry.
Oh, totally, yeah. And, you know, without sort of turning it into a blockchain geek fest, you know, there's the music publishing game, I think, is really ripe for being completely disrupted in this way, because, you know, if you've got really solid underlying technology that can understand who bought what and when, and who played what, where and when, then that can only be a good thing for artists, because we're going to get much more accurate and also, like, undisputable, you know, accounting. That's only going to lead to a fairer shake for artists, really. So there's a huge opportunity there for sure. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed indeed, mate. So, you know, obviously you've got your own label, you've got Origins. I mean, you've been putting tracks out, right, in the last year, still been keeping quite a regular release schedule.
Yeah, at first, I did shift the schedule around to suit the time a little bit. So the first record we put out during the lockdown was from PM, from Barcelona, called 19, featuring a Dutch singer called Anna. So it's kind of poppy, actually. It's probably the most commercial thing we've released. But it did really well, and it's since been licensed to Defected. It's going to be re-released on Defected later this year.
Nice.
So yeah, the first couple of months we sort of adjusted the music policy to suit people being at home. But as it went on, and obviously the it just, there was no sort of end in sight. I just thought, sod it, I'm just going to keep putting bangers out. They've got all this schedule planned. We had Wicked track from Second City.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he was one of the first like club tracks we put out that wasn't actually ever really played in a club. But it's done well, I think. It served us pretty well because at the end of the day, people still love house music, and even if they're dancing around the kitchen,
it all counts, doesn't it? It all counts.
It does.
And I imagine, because what we found when the lockdown first happened, a lot of people signed up for our subscription, who were complete beginners and were like, I've never had the chance or the time or the opportunity to actually indulge in this as a passion. But now it looks like I'm going to be spending 4 months at home. I need a new hobby. So Here I am. So, it's funny because, I believe Beatport had a great year last year on sales, did really, really well. So a lot of that, I would imagine, are coming from, new people who are maybe, indulging in their passion for dance music and maybe learning how to DJ for the first time. Or, it was essentially the same for us. I think there's been a lot of, new interest in that regard. So I'm not surprised that the tracks are still doing well because, even though the clubs aren't open, people are still going to listen to music no matter where they are.
Of course, I think you've nailed it there. It's almost a completely new market, isn't it? People who have been out clubbing and see the DJs and want to do it, but they usually have to go back to work in the week and just don't have time. But since everybody was on furlough, what better time to buy a little MIDI controller and just get a taste for it, It's so accessible these days.
No, it is, absolutely. I mean, we very deliberately, just at the start of lockdown, we ran an 8-week getting started in Ableton course, and it was just wildly popular. It was just so busy with full of people who were literally, like we were just saying, I've never done this before, always wanted to. This is a perfect introduction, a perfect kind of primer into into production. And we had people finishing tracks in 8 weeks.
Amazing.
So it's really great. So just sort of shifting back towards lifestyle, like we were talking before. You were saying about maybe looking at things in a bit more of a balanced way going forward. I mean, how's that going to look like for you? And what obviously the burnout's been a big driver of it, but has there been any sort of other sort of key drivers of how you're gonna tour going forward?
Yeah, I think actually being over here and reconnecting with New Zealand has been a big part of it. I'm probably going to spend a lot more time on this side, and probably just travel to Europe once a year. Do one big tour a year, probably like a band would, because it's a lot healthier. It's a healthier way of life over here. I'm barely drinking anymore. I don't get on it. Doing a lot more exercise again. But as I've mentioned to you off air, I had a back injury at the end of last year, probably September, October last year, and it put me out of action for a long time. I've only just started to recover properly now. I couldn't walk at some points. It was rough. Yeah, man. Turned out I had an MRI scan. It turned out to be L5-S1 slipped disc. And so a couple of years ago, I started getting sciatica in my left leg. Didn't think much of it, and it eventually went away. And then I got really into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a few years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so the sciatica ended up coming back, and I kept going to the gym and just trying to train through it and just thinking, oh, it'll go away. It's nothing. Yeah, but obviously it turned out to be this bulging disc, and getting thrown around has just not helped it, and I made the situation a lot worse. But since speaking to professionals, osteopaths and physios and stuff, I think it's a combination of it's basically like lifestyle choices that have led to that disc being fucked, for lack of a better term. partying too much, not sleeping, being run down, bad diet, sleeping in weird positions on planes as well. You know, I'll always be like this against the window. So bad posture, combination of all this stuff has, you know, just built up the pressure in my back, and then all of a sudden it just popped. And I do think that's down to an unhealthy lifestyle over the last like nearly 10 years of traveling now.
Yeah, totally.
So
yeah,
I think slowing that down and exercising more, eating well, strengthening my back, it's it's going to be a lot more balanced going forward for me.
Well, it has to be, doesn't it? Because it shows you just how fragile we are, and you know it can happen to anyone, and it can happen to the best of us. You know, as in your case. I mean, I'm like just starting to feel the mild effects of sciatica because I've basically just been sat in this chair for a year.
Yeah,
you know, and that I'm someone.
That's it. It's sedative lifestyle that does it a lot of the time.
No, it is, and it's like it's this forced sedentary lifestyle because like I'm extremely active. Like I do jiu-jitsu as well, or did do did do before the lockdown. It was something that was becoming like, you know, you have that moment where you sort of dip your toe in the water for the first time, and then it becomes an obsession. Like I was at the point where it was,
mate, and you know, whereas it's easy to slip into other addictions when you're surrounded by all sorts in nightclubs and stuff. I found it was a way for me to say no to that stuff and have a reason to try and stay fit. Because if I went to class on Monday, I'm just going to get battered. You know what I mean? So it was a reason to not party as much and try and be switched on for class next week.
No, totally. Yeah, I agree with you. And it was the same for me as well. But yeah, it is hard on the body though. It has to be said. Like jiu-jitsu is so hard on the body, and if you're not looking after your body in other ways, like I'm super grateful for having like a really long-term, really committed yoga practice. Like I've been like now nearly 8 years in terms of yoga, and I actually qualified as a yoga teacher last year. I actually did like one of the nicer things about lockdown was I managed to do like an online teacher training, which was really good. We've actually got 5 hours of like yoga classes on the NYT platform now, so you know we try and look at it from like, you know, loads of different angles. But even with that, it's like I'm still suffering even now, and it's just this isolation and you know, you're just kind of doing the same loops around the house all day every day, do you know what I mean? So it's quite tough. So what have been like the strategies? I know you mentioned you're working with like osteopaths and physios and stuff. Like what's been the main sort of protocols you've been doing to kind of aid your recovery?
At first I want to give a shout out to somebody, Kirsty, in fact two people, Erin, she's a Scouser, and also Kirsty from the Warehouse Project, who she runs Pilates classes.
Wicked.
She helped me so much. She sent me like a plan basically of how to get started from barely being able to move to then strengthening. So I don't know if you're familiar with a guy called Mackenzie. I think his name is Robert Mackenzie.
No,
but basically he developed a load of stretches for specifically for slipped discs in the lower back.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a pose in yoga. Like a half press up kind of pose.
Yeah.
So that was like, I was spending a lot of time in that position. Like I'd be watching TV in that position, I'd be doing my emails there, and half my day was spent lying on the floor in a half press up position just to try and to push that disc back in a bit. And eventually once that slowly you know, reduces in size, you can start to move a bit more because it's not pushing against the nerve. That was the main thing that was causing all the trouble. The disc was bulging and trapping the nerve essentially. So once you've got a bit more mobility, you've just got to make the most of it and try and move it as much as possible. Sitting down is only going to make it worse. So I was doing a lot of walking and Pilates, the really light exercise, and still doing it. It's easy to get complacent. Some days when it's not hurting, it's like, I'll forget it, do it next week. But you have to be consistent with that kind of stuff because core strength and back strength is very important. I'm sure a lot of DJs and producers suffer with back injuries. It's a common problem in our industry from bad posture, sat in the studio and, as I mentioned, on planes and stuff, or hunched over the decks.
Absolutely.
It's easy for stuff to...
Yeah, it is. It's easy for stuff to go, and that's like, even now, when in the past we were lugging massive, heavy boxes of records around with us as well. Yeah, exactly. No, it's good to hear that you've made so much progress on that, and you highlight so many important issues around consistency. Because I'm the type of person that I love classes. I love I've got a local yoga studio here in Liverpool. That's amazing. That we've got again a bit of a family vibe around. So losing that for long stretches of last year has been really difficult because it's kind of hard to simulate the type of yoga I'm into because I'm into hot yoga. So it's no matter how much I turn the central heating up or put the fire on in me lounge, it's just not hot enough. Do you know what I mean?
So what do you do it in a sauna?
It's basically it's essentially a sauna. Yeah. So it's hot yoga is based on the old school Bikram yoga, which is really my entry point into the yoga world. Because again, the nice thing about Bikram is that it's the same sequence. So I can walk into when I'm on tour or I'm traveling somewhere, I can walk into Bikram yoga in Amsterdam during ADE, or I can be in Bali and I can walk into Jiwa yoga in Bali right next to the W Hotel where I normally DJ. It's exactly the same class. You know exactly what you're getting, exactly what you've got to do, and it's always the temperature's exactly the same. So basically it's anywhere between 34 to 37 degrees centigrade with 40% humidity in there.
Wow.
And you just absolutely sweat just all your demons out.
I bet you do, yeah.
Yeah, you really do. You come out there like a new man, and it's similar to what you were saying about jiu-jitsu. Because I never really got on it that much. But I used to like a drink in me heyday, and going to yoga the night the morning after a gig or a morning after the night out or whatever, it always made me kind of hit the pause button a little bit because I had a couple of classes where, to be quite honest, I'd turn up at the class hungover, and you could probably wring me towel out into a pint glass and probably serve it at 10% proof. Do you know what I mean? Because it was just all the booze was just sweating out of me, and I'm getting dirty looks off all the old women in there because it's just why do you stink of vodka? But no, it's an amazing thing. So it's been tough from that regard as well, of having to do yoga at home on your own and only having online classes to kind of see you through. So to be honest, I'm sat here now, the gyms are supposed to be opening here halfway through next month, and it's I just can't wait to get back in there because that is my daily routine. If that studio's open, I am there 7 days a week.
Yeah, well, it's clarity as well, isn't it? It's not only physical fitness and strength, it's mental health as well. I think I'd come out of a class, fucking dripping in sweat, but just so focused and clear. It would just make life a lot easier. The clouds or any dust from the weekend just be...
No, exactly. So are you intending on going back to jiu-jitsu if the back feels good enough and you get the all clear?
I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to, but I just don't want to push it at the moment because the last thing I want to do is mess up my back again. So we'll see.
And if there's anything that's guaranteed to find a weak point, it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because I was just before the lockdowns happened, and it by the time that all happened, being sat on by a big sweaty bloke who's trying to strangle you probably didn't seem like a good idea for healthcare reasons. You know what I mean? But I was going through that whole white belt first year, turning up every week, getting absolutely smashed to pieces and just learning how to survive. So I was just at that point where I was starting to kind of like, oh, I can do a little bit more than just survive it. I can start pulling a few moves, and I'm starting to learn and, you know, like starting to make progress of like, okay, well, I've just made 5 minutes not being submitted. Like, that's massive progress for me. Like, so
This is why it's so addictive, I think, because you can see such, especially in the beginning, you see such a steep learning curve. You know, the first 2 years, you learn so much, and you see new people coming into the gym, and then you start submitting them, and that's like very addictive feeling, you know, as well as being smashed by the blue and purple belts every week as well. You still realize, oh shit, I've got a hell of a lot to learn here.
No, totally. And what I love about it is like, it's just, you could practice jiu-jitsu for the rest of your life and still not have learned everything, and it's a constantly evolving thing. I love what Joe Rogan used to say about Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He called it, what was it, 3-dimensional chess with dire physical consequences.
Yeah, I've heard him say that.
Yeah, which is absolutely true. And you don't know it or appreciate it until you actually get on the mat and try it, you know?
Well, so I actually went into the first class not really knowing what it was, because I used to do Japanese jiu-jitsu as a kid. My dad used to basically force me and my brother to go as kids. We were quite reluctant.
He's one of those dads, was he? You learn how to defend yourself at all costs.
Yeah. In hindsight, it was one of the best things ever. You know, we were in great shape as teenagers, but obviously when I discovered partying and music, I just stopped all that. But then, probably 3-4 years ago, I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it another go. Just wanted something new to do, new challenge. And so I went into this class, and it was only on the ground. I was like, oh, all right, well, this has changed. So I then learned that it was a completely different style, and learn a bit of the history of it then.
Yeah, because it was actually derived, right? It was derived from Japanese jiu-jitsu, wasn't it? Because it was somebody taught Japanese jiu-jitsu to one of the Gracies, right? And then that was all developed from there, yeah?
Yeah, he developed it for the short Brazilian physique, I suppose. Gracies are all short, aren't they? So they just took the best bits that worked for them, and it turned into its own thing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's spectacularly effective as well, you know. And I've got to admit, like it did wonders for my confidence when I started it, like now a couple of years ago. But it absolutely just, you know, it really helped me in a massive way. And again, going back to that tour in 2018 in Australia, it was great bouncing. Like, I was bouncing between all the jiu-jitsu gyms in like Bali and Melbourne.
Nice one.
I got a few roles in it. 12th Planet. Yeah. Which is Eddie Bravo's gaff. I got a few classes in there, and I tell you what, you know, if you come from like if you don't start with the 12th Planet system, it's weird because it's like everything's so structured, and it's like move sets that kind of chain together, and it's all no-gi as well. So if you come from a background like my background is almost all gi, really traditional, learning the fundamentals of that kind of jiu-jitsu, and it's a completely different world. Like, it's just a totally different thought process on the entirety of jiu-jitsu. Like,
yeah, I've never really done any of the 12 Planet stuff, but I'm pretty keen to give it a go. Some of his stoner control and all those mad names.
Rubber guard and all that, all the mad names he's got for stuff. Mission control.
Funnily enough, Eddie Bravo started following me on Instagram for some reason.
How weird. I actually saw him. It was my last foreign trip before all of this bullshit started. And I was in LA, and I managed to get tickets to the Comedy Store. And it was Rogan, Bravo, and Joey Diaz.
Oh, mate, you saw Joey Diaz.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what the funny thing was? He was testing new material out, so he was funny, but he wasn't like the Joey that we all know. Because he's one of my favourites. Like, I mean, if he's on Rogan, that's it. Everything stops, and I just have to listen to him because he's just such a legend.
He's not
but I know, yeah. But you know, a lot of people don't really rate Rogan's stand-up. Like, a lot of people prefer him in the podcast. You've got to see him in person because he absolutely blew the back doors off the Comedy Store this night. And he was really unbelievably funny. And it's like, oh, I think you've actually got to... Like, I've seen his specials and stuff, and I thought, they're all right. But to see him in person, it's a totally different thing. Like, you've got to get his aura and his vibe, basically. Like, but he absolutely stole the show. Like, but yeah, Eddie's doing stand up now, isn't he? And he's not bad at it. Like, I've got to say it. Like, he's not bad at all.
Maybe was he performing that night?
Yeah, he performed that night. Yeah, he did like 15 minutes as like a warm up act, and it was funny. Mostly dick jokes, but you know, you got to start somewhere, haven't you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'd love to be at that night. What a lineup!
Oh, mate, it was amazing, and I literally came. It was hilarious. Like, I literally got off the plane in LA. I had to go straight to the gig, so I'm literally there in the queue at the Comedy Store with my suitcase, like straight from the airport. Wow. Say, like, can I put this like behind the desk, like, because I've just come all the way from England just to see this. Which I hadn't. I was there for NAMM, but I just totally hammed it up and got some preferential treatment and some free beers.
I know.
Well, you've got to, haven't you? Yeah. You've got to.
I got to visit the Comedy Cellar in New York.
Oh, wicked.
A few years ago. Yeah, they had all the some of the SNL crowd there. So funny, man. Got a lot of time for stand-up comedy.
Yeah, same. And again, that's what made like living in LA really cool, because the comedy scene in LA at that time was just blowing up because everybody was still living in LA at that time. So you had, you know, every night you could go out and see Rogan, or you could see, you know, Joey Diaz, or you could see like Tom Segura or any of these amazing people. And there was an improv night I used to love going to called Upright Citizens Brigade. And it was complete improv, and I had a very near miss one night because I decided to take a girl on a date to this, and it was hilarious because basically I didn't realise they do this thing. It was a Tuesday night, and they do this thing called Facebook Tuesdays. So what they would do is randomly pick someone out the crowd, pick a seat number, make them come on stage, log into their Facebook account, and it was on a big projector, and they would then do half an hour of completely ad-libbed, completely made up on the spot comedy, improv comedy based on what they're talking about and what they're into on Facebook.
No.
Oh, God. And it was like, you know, you sat there and you're like, oh, God, please let it not be me. Thankfully,
did you get away with it?
I've got away with it, yeah, but it was one of those where it was like the person who got picked was within 2 rows, so it was like it had a bit of a sweat on for a minute, like.
Bloody hell.
Crazy.
I went to the Adelaide Fringe a few years ago as well. That was pretty cool. Yeah, the Adelaide one's the second biggest in the world after the Edinburgh one.
Oh, really? I never knew that.
Yeah, I went to see it. I went to see this show called Glittery Clittery.
I can only imagine. I can imagine the scene.
Yeah, leave that one to the imagination.
Yeah, maybe. That sounds like a whole podcast episode on its own, to be honest. That one. Hysterical. So no, man, it's been great to talk to you, mate, and you know, it's great to see you doing so well over there, and you know, just it's really interesting because like I'm now thinking about like relocating myself, you know, when the time is right. And you know, to be honest, like one of my favorite cities in the world is Melbourne. Like I just adore Melbourne. I felt so at home there. Like
you know, that's also a big benefit of being here, and what makes me think that it could work, me being here more permanently, is Australia is so close, and Melbourne is such a great city for music, and I imagine comedy as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a very creative place, isn't it? You know.
No, it really is. Like, I mean, I don't know whether you've ever had this, but you know, you probably obviously get that because you've spent so much time over the years in New Zealand and you grew up there. But the first time I even set foot on the ground in Melbourne, it was like I had this weird feeling of like, have I like been here before? Because I just feel so at home there. I can't even get my head around it. And
Very European.
It's very European. Like the way I explained it was, it's like all the best bits of all your favourite cities in one place. Because there's bits of it.
Describe it.
Yeah, there's bits of it that remind me of like the alleys in Amsterdam with like great coffee, and there's bits that really remind me of like, you know, the best bits of East London, like the sort of the more sort of hipster areas like Fitzroy and stuff like that. And then you know, you've got like bits that just feel like LA, and it's just it's weird.
The beach, yeah.
And you've got the beach, and you know the weather's like not. I was there in like September, so it wasn't like too hot, but it was quite changeable and almost quite European, the climate, like, you know, apart from in the summer, which obviously gets really hot. But, you know, I love that saying they've got in Melbourne. They say, like, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. And it's totally true, because it flips on a hatefully. And that I think, after being in Bali for 2 weeks and, like, just got used to the, you know, the humidity and the intensity of the heat there, it was actually really nice to sort of, again, like that word, like decompress in Melbourne. So, yeah, it feels like a place I wouldn't mind moving to. So actually talking to you, like, I've been worried about, like, it being too far away. And actually, like, what you're saying and how you're approaching it is giving me reason to think that it is actually something that's doable.
I think it is, you know, it's definitely going to be a completely different way of approaching things, because it is a long way, you know. But there is a big scene over here, well, especially in Australia. You know, I don't know if you know Thick as Thieves. Yeah, so Mike Toner and the crew, Thick as Thieves, they do some amazing stuff, you know. They're like I like to call it like the Irish house music mafia.
Oh God, yeah. The Revolution Revolver upstairs, that absolute ghetto of amazing club, like.
Yeah, and it's great to see Revolver rocking again now as well, because Australia's in a good way at the moment. So Mike's been doing a few gigs himself. He's back DJing.
Wicked.
getting inside the cage at Revolver. Yeah. That place gets loose.
Oh, very, very loose. Very loose. Like, yeah, I killed a few brain cells in there myself when I was over there, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, mate, it'd be ace if you considered moving over to Melbourne.
Yeah, totally. Because, like, I mean, I played some great gigs there. Like, I played in Brisbane, which was wicked. And I played, you know, Sash in Sydney.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, my God, what a party that is. That is just
I've not been to it, but I've heard really good things.
Yeah, like, that whole, where they do those gigs at the rooftop of the Greenwood Hotel in, like, North Sydney is just amazing. Because I have played at the Greenwood. I don't think it was Sash. Yeah, because they do Sundays there normally, like under normal times. Like, yeah, and it was an amazing gig, because it was like, you know, I played sort of like late afternoon into the evening. It was like, you know, one of those sets where it goes from like light to dark, and you can feel I love those transitional sets, like, because
me too.
I mean, I love playing any time. Like, I honestly, like, I've got, you know, very little kind of ego about these types of things. Like, if you want me to go on first, I'll go on first. I'm not asked. Like, I actually really enjoy warming up, you know what I mean? I actually think it's a really, you know, it's a big lost art these days.
Yeah,
like,
well, I think for people like me and you, we've got quite broad music tastes. So we've got music to suit any time of day or night. And one of the I hesitate to use this word, downside of being like a headline DJ, is that you don't get to play that kind of music very often. So when you do get to warm up or do those sunset kind of sets, they're always quite special, you know.
No, absolutely, and this one definitely was, and you know, the sound over there really suits what I'm all about and stuff as well. So, you know, it's a serious consideration, like, because, you know, as much as I love the UK, it's like, I don't know, in future I don't think it's going to be where I predominantly call myself home, and I feel like I've kind of done the LA thing now. Like, I feel like I've kind of got that out of my system, and, you know, as we were saying just off air, it's like LA's turned into, unfortunately, quite a tough place to live over the last year. So, you know, it's probably not too attractive for creative people at the moment, because it's quite an expensive place to live.
I think we're in similar positions, because I was ready to leave the UK at the end of 2019, was start of 2020. My house was pretty much packed up, and I was ready to move to Spain, either Barcelona or Ibiza. And then obviously that got postponed. and now my thoughts are shifting. I'm trying to form a plan.
No, good, mate. I mean, again, it's great that you just decided to take that opportunity. Like, as I said right at the beginning, I don't think anyone would blame you or anyone would make a different choice to the one that you made. You know, and it's important. Like, so I think the last year, I mean, I can only imagine, because it was frustrating for me, because like I was actually thinking about giving LA another go last year before the pandemic, because I'd been over there, as I mentioned, like, you know, obviously, you know, you're coming back to England off a high, having seen like Joe Rogan do stand-up and Joey Diaz in the flesh. And I had a great week over there because I went to the NAMM conference and did a load of work over there for D&B Audio, which is a company that I work with quite closely for sound systems. So I was considering like giving it another shot, because there was plenty of work coming with D&B. Obviously, I've worked quite closely with a lot of the film music composers over there. And then the world kind of just sits on its head, and it's like, no, you have to stay in Liverpool now for the next year.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so, like, I can't, like, one of the things I didn't expect this, one of the things I'm really struggling with is, like, getting my head around the fact that not only have I not now left the country for a year, which is just unheard of in my adult life, I'm about to spend my second straight birthday in lockdown.
Oh, mate.
So so obviously like the 23rd is when it all kicked off. I turned 40 on the 29th of March last year. So basically by the time this all is over, I'll have spent my 40th and my 41st birthday in lockdown.
Oh, mate. Well, we've got to make up for it once it's all over.
Oh, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I think you'll be seeing me before I see you, if you know what I mean. And as I said, I don't think those birthdays count. So technically, I still think I'm fucking 39, to be honest.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've got the looks to pull it off, so why not? Do you know what I mean? May as well blow my own trumpet. No one's going to blow it for me. So yeah, I'm definitely thinking about moving in that sort of direction. And, you know, and again, like, just a thought that I've just had pop up is, what I love about you is that you're the type of person that just, we're very similar in a lot of ways, actually, because I like to just randomly turn up in places. Like, and people are always surprised. Like, what are you doing here? And it's like, well, exactly. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I love that. Like, yeah, exactly. I always said that, like, my superpower is that on any given moment, like, until the last year, obviously, under normal circumstances, nobody's got a fucking clue where I am. So if I just randomly turn up, like, your first reaction tells me everything about where we're at as a friendship. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Oh, it's you. All right, fine. I know where to stand now. Nice one. But you know, even like, you know, with you sort of musically as well. Like, I remember you randomly turning up in a photograph with another couple of my really good friends, Darren Emerson and Charlie May.
Yeah. I know Charlie.
I know Charlie very well, obviously from the Sash days.
Sash sort of days, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And me and Darren have been mates for years, like so.
Yeah. So it was actually Neil Evans who hooked us up. I have a side project called Norwood, which at the moment I've only done one release. Did a release on R&S Records quite a few years ago. And Neil had the idea of me going down to Charlie's studio. You know, I'm sure you know he's got this studio in a barn in the middle of fucking nowhere near Somerset, I think. So I went and stayed with him for a few days. Darren came down from London for a couple of days as well. We both stayed over, and just threw ideas around in the studio. It was great, man. Really different as well, like really outside the box.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Yeah, I would love to hear that stuff if it ever sort of sees the light of day. Like,
yeah, I'll send you some links.
I would absolutely love that, because I've been picking Charlie's brains recently because I've managed to pick up a virus. The only virus I wanted during this pandemic was an access virus.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Oh,
enjoying it?
Oh, mate, it's brutal. It's just an absolute monster. It really is. Because now, like, as I was saying to you on Instagram, I've got 6 analog outs going into my interface now. Because like the plugin that it came with was never ever really that good, because I've been working with them for years, whether it was like Sashes or other people who I knew who had them. The plugin never really worked correctly, and it always caused more problems than it solved, really. So I was intent on running it as just a standalone synth, basically, and I was just gonna trigger MIDI and that kind of thing. I bought the MIDI cables for it and everything to just run it as an external synth. And then someone, Damien Saint, who runs the bookings for W Hotel in Bali, who I play for over there quite a bit. He basically sent me in the way of this Finnish company called Mystery Islands Music, and what they do is they make these they made the plugin for the virus that they should have made all along.
Amazing.
And it works as like a librarian, so you can like load your presets up and you can do all your automation and everything else, but you can still like spit the 6 mono out or your 3 stereo pairs out. So, the majority of the last week or so was like setting it up and getting all the presets loaded, and I've got all Charlie's presets in there and all the stuff off like Sasha and Volver, and there was a pack going around that Depeche Mode used on tour a few years back and stuff. So yeah, there was tons of it. So I was like, get it all on there, absolutely, just load the thing up. And I'm just getting some ungodly sounds out of it, and obviously because it's doing everything out of the box, like it's had a massively beneficial effect on my CPU as well, because I'm just pretty much getting everything out of here. And as I was saying,
soft.
Yeah, basically, yeah, like all just through here, because like it's so unbelievably versatile. Like, I mean, this thing came out in like 2008, 2009, and it was doing like wavetable stuff before like Massive had ever even been thought of, really, or any of those sort of Sidham or like wavetable synths. It can do granular, it can do FM, it can do subtractive, it can do virtual analog. I mean, and it can even you can do this thing with you can route audio into it and do the whole stutter edit thing with like this thing called the atomizer, and it's just so versatile. And if you really, it's one of those things like the deeper it's a bit like jiu-jitsu in a way. It's like the deeper you go into it, the more you want to learn, and the more down the rabbit hole you go. And and it's nice because like the Mystery Islands thing, it makes because obviously a lot of these things are very menu driven, so you have to really learn where things are in the menus, whereas the Mystery Islands plugin just makes it all available on like the front thing, and it's completely hooked up perfectly. So I turn a knob on here, I turn the filter cut off, it instantly works on the plugin and completely reflects what's going on. So I managed to get one for $1,000, which is just an absolute steal of a price, because they normally go brand new like over $2,000 now, or around $2,000. And as luck would have it, it was like the best eBay experience of my life, because sat there with my finger over it going, do I buy it, do I not, do I buy it, do I not? And it gets to the last 30 seconds, I'm like, fuck it, bought the thing. Turns out the guy only lived like an hour away. So we met out. I won the thing at like 4:00. I had it in my hands by 6 p.m.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck it.
How long have you had it now? Say 4 weeks or something?
Yeah, a couple of weeks. Yeah, about 2-3 weeks now. Yeah, and it's bedded in. I mean, I'm lucky because like I know them really well from, as I say, working with Sash and working with a load of other people on them and spending quite a lot of time on it. So it was just like it's like riding a bike, mate. You know what I mean? Just get back on the horse, so to speak. The main part of the last couple of weeks has just been getting it set up and getting it all cabled in and getting it right and stuff. And I'm like, I've got a notebook now because like it's funny, like the way Charlie names his presets, they're just like // bracket. It's like, how do you keep track of any of this stuff? So I've actually have to write the numbers down of like which ones I like, the good ones, and like try and save them into a different bank. And it's dead funny, like. But it's funny, like loads of people have still got them. Like I was talking to Sebastian Ledger about them the other night, because he was saying like he was having a bit of a problem with his Mystery Islands plugin, like, which we didn't get to the end of, because like there's like RAM banks, and then there's like 26 ROM banks that are full of presets as well. So it's just like it's endless. So
packed sounds,
just packed. So like you could buy this. It's like if you think about it, it can actually do 16 individual sounds multi-timbral at once if it wants to. So it's basically like, imagine like a hardware version of Omnisphere.
Yeah,
that's basically what it is.
Yeah, so you can route bass out of one, mono out. You can route white noise percussion or something, and then you can have 2 stereo outs for your lead.
Mm-hmm.
Mad.
Yeah, you can configure it whichever way you want. Like it's absolutely brilliant. It's really, really quite ingenious, and even like the onboard effects, like the delay and the reverb, just sound phenomenal. The distortion's unbelievable on it. Like you were saying, like run that through some like outboard process, and it's like a lot of the time you don't need it. It's just so on point and so clear. The main thing I'm having a field day with at the moment is bass with it. The basses on this thing are just disgusting.
I bet. And for me, what instantly springs to mind is like the trancey mid bass sounds as well. Those real rhythmic,
plucky kind of sounds.
Plucky sequences.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It does that a charm, and then you add a little bit of like sort of granular to that as well, or the actual the effect, the onboard effect I love most on this is like the phaser, because you put that phaser on like any sort of ARP or anything, it just turns into like instant Charlie May basically.
Class.
It's got that really kind of like textured thing that he does so well, where like there's still records I still listen to of his remixes, and I sit there and I think, how the fuck have you done that? Like he's one of those ones. He makes me feel like I want to retire. He's that good. Do you know what I mean?
I learned a lot from spending that week with Charlie.
I bet.
Just even his workflow. He will spend like 5 or 10 minutes at a time in there, and then he'll walk away and go and do something else, and then he'll like refresh his ears. And then he'll come back to it, go back to the studio, do another 20 minutes or something, and then he's off again.
Like quick, short bursts. Like, I mean, I'll be honest, I can see the benefit in that, because like we've been advising people, like, because I'm really into like neuroscience and like flow states and stuff as well. And, we're actually teaching that on NYT at the minute, is like, how do you get into a flow state? And one of the things that we've been talking about based on books like Steel and Fire, The Rise of Superman, Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, which is like the book. That's where the term the flow state comes from. Okay. Like they was like all of the research states that the maximum amount of time that you can spend in a peak flow state is 90 minutes.
Really?
And, I've got like people saying like, I've just spent 6 hours on this one respace, and it's like, I bet you after 90 minutes, like you were just wasting your time basically. You may as well have just walked away basically. So it's interesting to hear Charlie sort of working in those sort of quick little bursts. I think that's really, really productive.
Yeah, it definitely, it's helped me a lot, because I start doing that more now as well. Because I was probably guilty of doing that as well, especially when I had the studio unit, when I was paying rent for a separate studio, and I was thinking, right, I need to make the most of this. I need to make it count. I'd spend all day in there. There was no windows either, so it'd be in a dark room all afternoon, even if it's summer outside. And I'm like, you're gonna make a tune. You're gonna make a band.
I mean, I think there's a place for that, at some stage of a career. But like, when you gain a level of like, quote unquote mastery over the process, it's like it's not really necessary. Like if you know the nuts and bolts of what you're going for, it's like you can work smarter rather than harder.
Oh, totally. I think you can be much more effective with your time and your creativity by taking breaks and almost forgetting about what you've just made. Resetting your ears.
Yeah, and I like to work on like specific like categories, if you will, as well. Like this is the big thing that we talk about as well, is we try and separate the processes out as much as possible. So what we find is that a lot of people, like, they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves to make bangers all day, every day. But the problem is that they're not really giving enough attention or allowing themselves to basically play and to, like, fuck around and just, like, I always say, like, it's like have a competition with yourself to make the weirdest noise. And create that, like, sandbox that you can play in safely, where, you're in a completely different session. You're in a blank Ableton session or Logic session or whatever, and for the next 2 hours you're just going to sit there and make bass sounds or kicks or arps or leads or whatever it is that you want, that then go into and they form the inspiration for the next set of tracks, basically, that end up using those sounds.
Such a good way of working, you know. And also another thing I found over the years is it's very easy to get attached to ideas, and even if the idea isn't working, I would, you know, like I said, then I would try and force it to work, and I'd be so attached to this. I'm like, I know there's an idea in there, and you know, it's going to work. And sometimes you've just got to disconnect from that and put it in a folder, forget about it, come back to it in 6 months, start something new. And what's really helped me is I've got the Ableton Push recently.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, I put it off for so long because I just thought, you know, I know Ableton inside out. And I thought it works, you know. I'm kind of the mind, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I was thinking, you know, I'm doing all right without Push, but since I've got it, mate, I can't believe I didn't do it before, because I'm now spending 20-30 minutes at a time just building ideas strictly from Push, not touching the laptop.
Amazing.
You know, trying to get to know the instrument. And it's made the writing process a lot quicker. And I found, because I'm making more ideas fast, I'm not getting as attached. And so if one isn't working, I can just, you know, sack it off, start a new one.
There's definitely a lot of the psychology of like how you physically interact with the music itself. You know, I had that sensation. I've had a Push for a long time now, about maybe 5 or 6 years. I had a Push 1 and then upgraded to a Push 2.
Yeah.
And just, honestly, I personally think this is the single best controller that has ever been made in this generation, because it's so complete. And the way Ableton have done it, the way they've made it so open-ended so they can actually like improve on it with, like, say, Ableton 11 or a point update of Ableton, it unlocks new features now, like the polyphonic aftertouch on Live 11 and stuff. It's made it more like, and it completely changed the way I arrange tracks, because like I'll now, for the last few years, I'll arrange the tracks completely in the session view.
Okay.
So I'll do the skeleton of the track, like, you know, 32 bars of this, 8 bars of that, 16 bars of this, whatever.
Yeah.
And
then you'll punch through the different sections on the Push.
Yeah, and I'll record it into the arrangement view straight from the Push. And I might do a little bit of automation on there as well, just to get a vibe. And then once that's in there, I'm in the arrangement. I can then do like long automation passes. I can do like global edits, because normally when I lay things out in the Push like that in the session view, normally comes out a lot longer than it needs to, which I'm quite happy with in a way, because it means that I'm getting all of my ideas out, and I can then be selective and trim and edit and, you know, crop the bits out that I don't like, or where it's getting a bit boring, that kind of thing. But like,
rather have too little.
Oh yeah, exactly. You know, rather than like, you know, having to build it up in the arrangement view. And don't get me wrong, like there's certain styles of tracks that work. I mean, I still use both approaches. It just depends on the type of track that I'm making. If it's a more sort of dance floor oriented track, I'll probably go for the more session view, structured, looped based thing. And then if it's more sort of, you know, sort of loosely structured and a bit more free form, then I'll go the more old school arrangement view way. But the way that I've got my setup now, because I've got the Virus right here, I've got the Push here, I've got a couple of the Roly bits, I've got like the Seaboard and the light pad here, I've got a Novation Launch Pad Mini, which I got for Logic, because I still use Logic quite a bit, and obviously this fella here, the Complete Control. Like, I now find that because I've got the sort of the 180 here, I'm not even sitting in my chair when I make music anymore. Like, I'm stood up most of the time, and I'm getting a vibe, and it's almost everything feels like it's starting to feel like live jams. So
important that I think that's the way I want my next studio to be, is have racks of stuff rather than the desk be the central part of the studio. And I got this from Melee, actually. I don't know if you've been in Melee studio.
I haven't, no.
But his is very much like that, you know. He's got a small desk, but rarely sits in it. He's always on his keyboards, or, you know, the whole room is surrounded by gear. So you're just mooching around the room and dancing, and like you get into it more. I feel like you can, if you're making yourself dance, you're doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. I always remember Paul Wolford said that in an RA interview. He said basically like everything's got to go through the chair test. Like if it doesn't get me out the chair and get me dancing, it's shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's so true. It's so true. Like, and we get like sort of so sucked in, don't we, with the keyboard and mouse, and like that's where the majority of the attention comes from. So yeah, it's funny, and we've just like and again, it shows you where things are changing within the scene as well. Like, because obviously a lot more artists are playing live on stage as well as just DJing. Yeah. So we've got an amazing like young Dutch producer. He's like basically like imagine like a 24-year-old Dutch version of Stefan Bodzen. Like he's insane. Like he built his own controller from scratch. Basically, he tore apart two Akai MPC 40s and an Akai keyboard, mounted them in his own box, made it all work together, and got it communicating with Ableton with like Arduino and Max for Live and all this stuff. Like he's one of those. Like he's just a complete geek in the best possible way. And he's like he basically performs the whole thing on stage. Never has to look at his computer. It's all on this one thing, and it's an incredibly engaging visual. So, like, he's literally just done a course for us, which is like, here's how I make a track, and then this is how I format it so I can then go out and play it live.
Oh, mate, I'd be quite keen to see that.
It's an amazing thing, like, in what he's done. He's an incredible...
Because I've always been quite intrigued how people do that, because I bought the... it was the APC 40. Yeah, I did buy one of them quite a few years ago with the faders on and that, with the intention to build a live set. But it just got so complicated, I just gave up in the end. There were so many different ways and possibilities of doing it. Like, do you bounce all the loops and master the loops individually, or do you work from the original project with all the automation in it? I don't know. I just thought, yeah.
Yeah, it's mad. It's like you say, there's so many different ways to approach it. There's so many ways to kind of like square the circle, so to speak. But like Holt, his name is Jeff, the artist I'm talking about. He's just done the course for us. Like he does basically like reformat things into the session view, and it gives him ultimate flexibility. So he's kind of like, it even allows him the flexibility to even play other people's records if he wants to. So it's kind of like this weird hybrid of like a DJ set turning into something else, which, in my opinion, I think in the next 5 or 10 years, that's kind of what DJing is going to look like. It's going to look like this weird halfway house between people playing their own music, integrating bits of other people's music, and it's all going to kind of meet in the middle.
Yeah, I think you could be right. The Richie Houghton way of doing it, with all the loops and...
Dude, I saw him do, his Closer show.
Yeah, is that the one where he had the box?
No, that was when he did Plastic Man and he had the cage round him.
You're right.
But no, Closer was like, he'd have all like loads of GoPros set up like over his synths, and then you get like real close-ups of him, like actually, you could actually see very clearly what he was doing. But he played the Roundhouse in London, and basically like these sets like are one of a kind, because he just goes on stage and jams.
Just jams, yeah.
So like no two sets are alike, and it absolutely blew my mind what he did in just 90 minutes at the Roundhouse. He absolutely tore the arse out of it, and just
venue for it as well.
Oh mate, belting venue for it, absolutely amazing, absolutely phenomenal. Like, so and there's a lot coming as well, like in terms of like a lot of the work that I'm doing for D&B is more in terms of like surround sound and how we can really integrate surround sound into the club environment, which we've actually been really like successful at, which is...
I seem to remember that, I could be wrong with this, but I think Bookham did something to do with 3D sound.
Yeah, a lot of artists have tried it, like, and there's a lot of thought in the space now. So there's a lot, like, obviously there's Dolby, L Acoustics do a really great sound system called Lisa. We at D&B, we've got our version Soundscape, which is what Bjork and Kraftwerk used on tour for their Kraftwerk 3D shows. So there's a whole revolution coming once things open up around that as well. Where we've managed to get the controls down to like really nice and simple ways of working with the system, where it can all be controlled from like one iPad and a regular DJ mixer.
So the DJ will control where the sound is directing from.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's mental.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was brought in to kind of figure out from the artist perspective, like, and even like we've now got a point where we can even get monitor mixes in headphones that are headphone surround mixes, which are like a representation of what's going on out in the club, basically.
So you can, so you're monitoring it on stage in 3D.
Mm-hmm. So you know exactly where you're panning stuff, and you know exactly where things are. Yeah. You know, you can even like, if you design your own controllers using stuff like the Lemure app, you can even have like elements like bounce around the room and have like their own physics and stuff, and you'd have like, you know, a sound just like ping ponging around the room on its own and just figuring its own way around the space and stuff. Like, that's
so cool.
Yeah, it's gonna make things really, really quite immersive and really quite interesting. It's gonna lead to a big change in thought process, because I've played a couple of gigs on them now, on this system now. And one of the things that you realise you have to shift into, you realise you have to think about playing the room as an instrument rather than just playing the records, because you've got to play with like mono and stereo to make things more immersive. So, you know, you can start with the track just playing it in straight mono, and especially for like, you know, prog heads with the big breakdowns or trance heads with the big breakdowns and stuff, you can then slowly make it envelop the entire room for the build, and then at the drop you can suck it all the way back into just mono again.
Oh mate, that sounds amazing.
It's like, once you start down that road, it's like regular DJ. I remember I played this gig in LA to open the D&B studio that they've just opened up, the big depot in Long Beach. I played their opening, and then I played I think I played ADE, or I played a gig straight afterwards, like on a regular sound system. I was like, oh, this is a bit boring now. I've ruined regular DJing for myself, because I can't do any of my new party tricks, like, you know.
So are you just playing your tracks as you would on a normal set or a normal setup, and it's splitting the frequencies?
Well, that's
so you're not playing
one way of doing it.
You're not playing stems or anything.
No, you can play stems, absolutely. You can do the frequency thing, but it never sounds that good. Right. Unless you're using like really, like, I mean, I think the algorithms are going to come for that are going to be, you know, really on point.
When you split the highs, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been systems that have tried that in the past, and, you know, when you recombine everything, there's always like phase differences, and you've got to be careful around like where you put stuff. Because again, like timing specific stuff, you can't really move it that much because of the timing differences between the front and the back of the room. The image tends to fall apart a bit, which is what we found actually. Like, we started off in a really small demo space at D&B's UK offices, and because you're in a small space, you can just go fucking wild and pan stuff and have stuff flipping around the place. And then they took us to their actual global headquarters in Stuttgart, and they've got
it's like a warehouse or something.
Yeah, it is. It's called Hall 17. Like, if it was a club, you could probably fit like 1,000 people in there.
Decent.
And like, I called up the mix that I'd done on one of my tracks, which was released on Bedrock, and it just sounded like the fucking Grand National. Because you've got to account for the space and the timing within that particular room, if you know what I mean.
The delays of the room, the acoustics in the room.
Yeah, totally. So, like, you know, we figured out, like, actually mostly playing just regular stereo tracks, and then having either specific stems or effects that we can have in surround, or like there's an upmix plugin that we can use that can literally take stuff and you can send to it, and it'll upmix it up into surround in real time. Right. So you can do the really big immersive stuff in that context, but the foundation is still solid. It's still like a for all intents and purposes, it's like a regular DJ set with loads of really interesting, like, immersive extras, which you can do really interesting things with. But as I say, like, the fundamental foundation is very, very solid. So
it's still a stereo track.
Yeah, and again, the great thing about the system is, like, you can throw anything at it. You can throw mono at it. You can throw stereo. You can throw surround files, 5.1, 7.1, even 10.2. It'll handle it. And on top of that, you know, you can even, like I say, you know, it's format agnostic as well. So you could rock up and play on Ableton with it. You can play a live set on it. You could play on CDJs. You know, you could play vinyl through it, and it, like, the processor will just take it up and go, oh yeah, well, that's just an object, and we can just start working with it around this field of speakers. It's incredible.
I'm so intrigued to hear this,
dude. It's phenomenal. And again, one of the most annoying parts of it was we were negotiating on getting the first clubs. And we still are negotiating on getting the first clubs systems installed with this, because again, the great thing about Soundscape is it can literally be just a regular sound system if you want it to be. If you want it to just be a mono system, it's really good at that. If you want it to be an all singing, all dancing, like, surround sound system that can just handle everything, like, it can do that as well. In fact, like, a Soundscape system is the new sound system in the Royal Albert Hall, because they handle everything, as you know, from, like, you know, Last Night of the Proms to, like, fucking cage fighting. So they need, and, like, you know, Dixon plays live in there every now and then, do you know what I mean? And Pete Tong and all this stuff. So it has, like, so many different use cases, and this one system can kind of handle it all. So we were negotiating on getting the first clubs installed, and I literally figured out how to get the whole thing working through an Allen and Heath Zone 96.
Right.
And then the lockdown happened, and it was like, oh. So I haven't obviously been on a Soundscape system for like a year now, and it's really frustrating. Really frustrating, because, like, that project is, like, as you can imagine, like, you know, for people like us, like, that's a project of a lifetime, like, because that could represent, like, a really big change in how we do things, and to be a part of that is massive.
Career-defining project.
It really could be, you know, considering I'm going to be, like, one of the first artists to play like this, do you know what I mean? Which is, you know, why I've got the virus now, and I'm kind of like, I'm transitioning towards being more of, like, a live artist myself, because, you know, personally, like, going back to touring and stuff and everything else, it's like, I want to do a very specific type of touring. I want to do more, like, live shows in, like, venues rather than, don't get me wrong, I'll still DJ, but, you know, I want to straddle the world of, like, film and TV as well as, like, electronic music, and sit in the middle of all that, because I've had amazing experiences working with, you know, film composers like Jeff Rona, Junkie XL, that kind of thing. And, you know, that's very much where
live shows tend to lean towards that world a little bit better, don't they?
Yeah, totally. So, like, I'm way more sort of down the hole of, like, you know, a Max Cooper or John Hopkins or something like that. Yeah, I played a wicked gig with him about 5 years ago. He played a hometown gig in Belfast, and I opened for him. And honestly, I played a DJ set, like, and it was hilarious. I turned up with my little headphones and my little USB stick, and I'm there and I'm doing my thing, and then Max rocks up with 2 laptops, controllers all over the place, and he's controlling the visuals and the music at the same time. It's like, I need to up my game here. Like, I need to start stepping it up a bit, you know? So that was, like, a big pivotal night, seeing him play live, because it was just like, shit, like, there's some really wild stuff that's really possible now, you know? And he did a load of those shows on that tour in surround as well. Like, he's been working with 4D sound quite a lot.
Just going back to the visuals and music, I went into Denon's office the other day. They've got an office in Auckland. I don't know if you've heard about their software, their equivalent to Rekordbox. You have, yeah.
I've heard of it. I've not seen it yet.
Yeah, so apparently you can program the lights for certain venues before you've been to the gig. So say you're playing a club that doesn't have a lighting engineer, but you've got a few tracks that you know are going to go off, and you want the lights to complement that. You can set cue points for moving heads and strobes and possibly smoke machines as well.
Wow.
To trigger on certain points of the tracks.
That's mental. That's really mental.
That's pretty cool technology, isn't it?
It's actually something, it's very similar to what Richie was doing with the Plastic Man thing when he had the cage, because he was controlling the visuals on the actual like video screen of the cage itself, like while he was playing. And I actually did like some mentoring work with him way back when he was doing this, like sort of 2010, 2011, and his Ableton session was just unbelievable. It was like 300 tracks, but it was converting like OSC to MIDI and then DMX for the lighting control and stuff, and it was a whole sort of new world at that stage. And like going back to Jeff Holt, who's just on the course for us, the next version of his controller that he's building at the moment, or he's designing at the moment, is going to do a lot of what you're just saying, like controlling like smoke machines and lights and stuff, like from the main sort of central console. So we're entering into an age where the artist is just going to have almost complete control over the experience, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the next 5 to 10 years brings, isn't it? I mean, the rate of technology.
Definitely.
I'm a bit of a technophobe, believe it or not.
Really? You do a good job of hiding it, mate.
So part of all this, I find it quite difficult to like make the leap.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I mentioned before, if it ain't broke, like the way my studio is, it's pretty old school setup, but I know how it all works.
Yeah, that's the main thing, mate. That's the main thing. You've got to know what your tools are. It doesn't matter what tools are in the toolbox, as long as they're the right ones for you.
That's it. Yeah, so I mean, it's just very, very exciting to hear about all these new things, but part of it's like, for me, it's like, whoa, I'm not sure if I want to be controlling the lights personally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's why we have lighting engineers who are professionals at this type of things. You know, I don't want to be giving people epilepsy through like accidentally knocking the strobe off for 10 minutes straight. You know what I mean? Exactly, mate, exactly. Well, mate, this has been an absolute pleasure. It really has. It's been great to catch up with you, because, like, you know, normally when we see each other, it's normally like passing ships in the night, right? It's like you're normally, like, I think the last time I saw you, it was like, you know, I was getting off a train in London as you were just getting on one. And
possibly.
Yeah.
I thought it was IMS the last time I saw you.
I think so.
We were both running meetings.
Yeah, again, like, that's just typical IMS as well. Like, you don't even remember the people you kind of sort of skate past, you know what I mean? It's crazy, but it's been great to kind of, like, you know, spend some proper, like, quality time talking to you, and, you know,
you too. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, amazing, mate. And, you know, you're welcome back anytime. And, you know, good luck with everything in New Zealand. Good luck with One for the Nerds. As I say, I think it's amazing what you're doing, and joining Simon's stuff and the team and that there. It's amazing. And, yeah, look forward to seeing what you get up to in future, mate. So, yeah, thanks very much for doing this, mate.
I'll be heading back. I'll probably be heading back to the UK around the end of the year. So I'll have to go for something.
Absolutely, mate. If I'm still there, if I'm not in Melbourne by that time, you never know.
But if not, I'll see you in Melbourne.
Indeed, mate. Indeed. Pints wherever happens, mate. So all good. Take it easy, mate.
Day.
And you, mate. See ya. Catch new episodes of Beyond the Studio every single week on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts.